Good morning, everyone. I decided to do a video explaining some of the equipment that I use and some of the equipment that if you're considering getting into canning that I highly recommend. Maybe not the type I have, maybe a different brand or a different manufacturer, and that's fine as long as it's going to do the job the way it's supposed to be done. And some of the first things you're going to need obviously is going to be your pressure canner. If you're going to do any meat at all, any non-acidic foods like the potatoes I did yesterday, you have to pressure can. It's not hard, it's not difficult. You can pick these up at resale stores. You can get replacement rings for them. And let me flip this lid. This rubber seal. Mine is a hand-me-down from my mother-in-law, and I've had to replace this seal. Once that seal was replaced, I also got the kit, included this seal, and we replaced this seal as well. And it's just an emergency blow seal is all that is. I have the weight that goes to this. I just don't have it out this morning. And some of the things to check if you're going to buy a used one, make sure things work, like this pop-up button. That's important that it works. Even the gauges, if you buy a used one, even these gauges can be purchased and replaced. So if you can pick up a used one, I encourage you to do that, because if I ever find a used one again, I plan on adding to my collection here, because my collection's bare bones. I've only been canning about 3 years now, and every year I try to do new items to can. This year was my cauliflower that I pickled and canned. I also did potatoes for the first time this year. I did pumpkin the first time this year, and sweet potatoes. So I'm broadening my horizon, if you will, as far as what I can do. The other type of canner, which is really inexpensive to buy, is a water bath canner. And you want to get a decent sized one, because if you're like me, you're going to end up doing batches bigger than what you factored in. And one of the cool things with this, all it is a boiling water canner, but mine came with this rack. This makes it easy to get the cans in and out. And see if I can, there we go. Now it's propped up. You can see that you can load your cans while this is above the bottom of the pot. And it's also easy to get out after you turn the heat off. It's still a good rolling boil, but it depends on you and your comfort zone. I'm able to pull this up from a rolling boil and prop it up like it is now and start letting my jars cool down. And it's a personal preference at that point. But I think this basket's one of my favorite features when I'm water bath canning. And water bath canning is basically anything that's a high acidic food. And some of those things are anything with vinegar in. Your tomatoes is a high acidic food, so you can do all your spaghetti sauces, tomato sauces, even homemade ketchup, you can can it. Chopped tomatoes, stewed tomatoes, whatever you're doing with your tomato crop. And that's a great thing to be able to do. When you are water bath canning, the amount of time in a water bath canner is very minimal. Just to give you an idea, those potatoes that I did yesterday were only 10 minutes. In a boiling water bath can. When you're canning meats, where I'm at, I go to 10 pounds of pressure for 90 minutes to can meats. Totally different scenario with the two. So you want to learn the difference between what needs to be water bath, what needs to be pressure canned, because that difference could mean the difference of food safety. And the one thing you got to make sure of is food safety, because if you're going to consume this, whether it's an Shtf or everyday food, you don't want to get sick. The last thing you want to do is get botulism. But with some basic procedures, you lessen the chance hugely of getting that. Pressure canning automatically disinfects and kills bacteria. That's why a lot of people pressure can a lot of things that they don't need to. So keep that in mind. Do your research. Don't take my word for anything. I'm only a 3-year canner, but I wanted to show you, if you want to get into canning, these are some of the tools I highly recommend that you own. Also, I have an electric pressure cooker. A lot of people are taught you can can in these cookers. That is inaccurate information. Never trust a pressure cooker as a canner. And here's why. There is absolutely no way on any of these devices that you know how many pounds of pressure that you're processing under. You can time them, yes, but how many pounds of pressure do these things put out? Nobody has published that information to my knowledge to this day. So one of my exciting things when I got this as a gift from my husband was like, oh, I can can a couple pints in here at a time. No, I did my research. I did the due diligence on this. You cannot pressure can in a pressure cooker because you need to know how many pounds of pressure that food is under. So keep that in mind. That's a big no-no in my book now. Some of the other items I think are vital. I bought an inexpensive, and it wasn't expensive at all, maybe $10. It's a ball utensil kit, okay? And basically what it has, I didn't get my funnel out, but it has a funnel as you can see on the box. It has my trusty grippers. This is to pull the hot jars, to move them from one point to the other. This is the debubbler. This is to get your bubbles out of your jar. Every jar should be debubbled. This is your magnet for lifting your hot lids out of your hot water to put on your jars. You'll see this used in many, many, many canning videos. That is a safe thing to use. And you never want to use metal when debubbling. You could use trying to think, bamboo skewers, Chinese chopsticks, that kind of stuff, but never put metal in your jars, kind of damaging your jars. So I use this since I bought the kit. One of the best accessories to my kit I added recently, and this is a little ball gripper. I can pick up hot jars with this. I love it because when you're putting hot water in a jar like I had to yesterday over the potatoes, I can hold my jar and screw my lids on. When I have to adjust jars as I'm bringing them out of the canner to put them on a towel, I just grab this. So that's a great accessory to have. Some of the things that I keep on hand as well is rings. That's the rings that go in the jar. I got two sizes. A regular, as you can see the difference in the size. There's a regular, see if I can get that better. There, that's a regular on the inside and a wide mouth on the outside. Those are generally the two sizes that you're going to find available in your local Walmart or wherever they sell canning supplies. I tend to not restock the regular ones because I'm stocking, I'm stocking more wide mouth. So, and I always pull my rings off after my jars are canned, and I'll show you that here in a minute. The other thing, extra seals. This is a wide mouth seal, just to give you an idea. See how that fits in that lid? That's my wide mouth seal. Now, here's a dilemma I'm starting to deal with. I accidentally used an old seal. It only been used one time prior, but I've been taught you never ever reuse these seals. Now I've recently started following Starry Hilder on YouTube, and she's been canning for 20 years. She reuses her lids as long as the lid is not dinged and damaged and the seal is not ruined. She heats them up and reuses them very successfully. So, back to what I was saying. I had accidentally used two lids, and I don't know how it got past me, but it did. And guess what? Those jars are sealed, and they're doing just fine. Now, the test will be how long will they be sealed. That's the test. But just a heads up, it's a personal thing. You're going to have to do some research and make a decision. Is it worth testing that or not? Or you just stock a ton of these lids to keep canning when the grid goes down. Because at some point, these lids are going to run out if the stores are not open and operating. Keep that in mind. There's also something called a Tadler lid. That is a reusable lid. I have not had the opportunity to order mine yet. I plan to, and then I plan to learn how to use them. They're not as simple to use as these are, but if they're reusable for say 10, 20 times, they're probably worth the extra money. They are more expensive than stocking these. The other thing I found that I actually love stocking is dissolvable labels. These labels enable me to label each and every jar as to what year it was put back and what it is. And the nice thing is, as soon as you put them in hot soapy water, these labels dissolve right off with no sticky residue. So I recommend stocking the labels as well. One of the other things I stock consistently is canning and pickling salt. Because the nice thing is, this salt can be used in everyday cooking, but it's designed specifically for canning and pickling. I'm going to be stocking probably about 10 boxes of this in the next month or so, because I think this is a great prep item. You can never have too much salt, and if you're going to be preserving your food, salt becomes vital when you're doing things like even ham and stuff. If you butcher and you can't refrigerate, salting is the way to go. So learn a little bit about salting and curing meats. The other thing, before you ever think of starting to can, you have to decide on what type of jars and what size jars you're going to want. I have used many size jars. So I do the quart jars, the wide mouth and the regular mouth. I do pints and half pints is what I've used so far. What I'm showing you here is something new I just got. They're pint and a half jars. So they're not quite a full quart. So for things like green beans, corn, these might be a perfect size for your family. It's about deciding what's the perfect size that you're going to need and use. Now, jelly jars are pretty much self-explanatory. It's the size you would normally pick up a jar of jelly in the grocery store, but these are yours for home canning. And then I also got, let's see if I can shift those. I don't want to break them, because I got a game plan for every jar that I own. In the case, I have a game plan. Now, these are half pint canning jars. They're a little shorter and squatter. I bought 2 cases of this because my goal is to can butter and cheese, things like cream cheese. I want to do that in these smaller jars so that when I open a jar, and I believe it takes about, some of these might actually hold 2 sticks of butter each. I won't know because I haven't canned butter yet, so this is going to be one of my learning curves. But I'm thinking 1 jar versus opening a jar this size of butter, you're going to be better off with this size. Because you don't want to waste it, you don't want it to go bad, so small jars for things like cheese and butter I think is a good idea. Jams and jellies, that's a perfect size, because unless you go through a whole jar of these a day, you don't want big jars for jams and jellies. Vegetables, meats, I think the half pint to quarts is a good size. Now, normally when I can meats, I use pint jars because we're a small family and we don't use a lot of meat. So pint jars work for my family. If you have a family of 5, you're going to want the pint and a half. It doesn't matter whether you're feeding 4 adults, 4 children, whatever. You're going to need more meat. So you're going to want to go to the next size up. Some of the other things I highly recommend. Canning books. This is not one of my favorite books though. I picked this up because it's like, oh, home preserving, I'm going to learn so much from it. Well, I haven't. It's full of recipes and that's great, but I'm more of a down-to-earth, pretty plain. I want to make like my potatoes. I didn't add anything but salt to them because I want to be able to use them in any way I want. Whether I want to fry them up, throw them in a stew, put them in a pot pie, whatever. And this is for people who want to get creative with their canning. but it's a good book to have. And there's a lot of canning books out. My go-to, and you can see this is not a new book. I have had this book for many, many years. And it's about, and I bought it because back then I was doing freezing. And this covers, it's a home guide to canning and freezing. So I bought it for freezing. But when I decided to start canning, I already had one of the best books you can buy. And that's the Ball Blue books. If you're going to buy your first canning book to start learning, this is the type of book you want. Now, you're not going to see this cover on the current books because they've really changed them. And from what I've heard, the new books are better than the old books even. But this is what I have. This is what I use. So that's something to keep in mind. And these are my basic go-to tools for canning. My best friend are these two big pots. They take some room to store, so I store them outside the kitchen, and when I need to can, I bring them in because I don't use these every day. If I can once a month in the fall, that's pretty much what I'm doing. Once a month. But then I try and do it all in one day. Now it's coming up. I just did, well, let me show you. I wanted to show you the jars. These are what I canned yesterday. I got 14 quarts of potatoes and 14 quarts of the cauliflower and carrots. So I've got 28 quarts here that I have to put away. And this morning what I did, it was really simple and basic. I got a sink full of hot water and soap, and I washed every single jar. And I took off all my rings. Why do I do this? One, it cleans any oils or residue off the jar, to include salt or anything that may have cooked out of the jars. And that reduces the attraction of these jars to rodents or pests. My dogs will walk right by a jar and not smell what's in them. So if you're in bear country, you definitely want to make sure you're going to wash your jars down before you put them in your pantry, because you don't want that residual smell drawing in animals, rodents, anything like that. I take the rings off because I'm cleaning in this area here as well, because I don't want that residual food in there, number one. Number two, a lot of times if I'm going to store for years, the history is that these can rust, and once they rust on your jar, it's super hard to get them back off. Well, I don't know about you, but I can't predict that in 10 years, my hands, right now I'm good and strong, but in 10 years, I may be arthritic. And I want to be able to open my jars. Now you ask, how do I open my jars? I'm going to show you here. I'm not going to physically open a jar because I have no purpose to use these today. I have just a regular, old-fashioned can opener. And I use the round end. I don't use the pointy end because I don't want to damage this lid now that I may repurpose them. And it's just a matter of hooking that underneath your lid and giving a very gentle little pry, and bam, it pops. And what you want to make sure is you check your jars periodically. When you hear that little pop, you know, number one, that jar was sealed good. You don't have to worry about it. The second thing you do is smell the contents. Because if it doesn't smell right, and canned food does smell different than normal food, so you have to get acclimated to that. But if it smells nasty, throw it away. Not your jar though. Jars are expensive. So throw your contents away, disinfect and scrub that jar real good, and put it right back in a case to be canned in again. Even your seal. So that's pretty much my thought on canning, and we all can for different reasons. I wanted to learn because for years now, Figure that one out for me. Let me know, because I don't know. But we definitely are storing food. I'm learning to preserve food, and that's key. Oh my gosh, people. If you're preparing and you're a prepper and you haven't learned how to can yet, get it learned. When the grid goes down or the store is shut down and you have to bring home a deer, rabbit, doves, squirrels, whatever, if you can bring them home in abundance, you're going to need a way of preserving them. This is how you do it. You can plant potatoes and walk away for 6 months, come back and you have a potato crop. But what are you going to do with them? I can't store potatoes in Florida because they start regrowing. So this is my remedy to that. I just can them up so when we need them, they're ready. And the other benefit to canning, and it's one of the things I'm learning to really enjoy. Okay, prime example, say, okay, I didn't plan dinner for tonight, but I have cooked potatoes or canned potatoes. I have canned carrots. I have a can of beef cubes already processed. I grab those 3 cans, throw them in a pot, throw some onion in, throw some brown gravy mix in. Bam! I got the most wonderful beef stew you will ever eat. And it beats just about anybody else's I've ever tried. So those are the type of things you want to be able to do. Say, okay, I've got canned chicken back there, home canned chicken. I want chicken salad. Wonderful. I go back, I drain the juice off, I shred the chicken, add what I want to add to make my homemade chicken salad, and I now have chicken salad. You never go hungry. You can can bacon. I love canned bacon. I buy bacon bits and pieces. You can get it in Walmart. And it comes in almost 7 pounds for half of what you would pay for 7 pounds if you bought it in a fancy package that showed you how nice the slices were. I take that and I shove it into pint jars and I fill them up. I process them 10 pounds for 90 minutes. Let them cool, clean them up real good, put them in a case in the back room. Now anytime I want bacon or even bacon fat, I've got it. This is amazing to me to be able to do this. So I hope this helps somebody get started, because I think canning is very, very important skill set for an SHTF. And if you're a prepper, you got to be able to can. I mean, it's all part of it. You can can beans, cabbage, so much stuff. Well, you can see this picture here. They made their own fancy corn. This is pickles. This is jellies and jams. Pickles again. These are tomatoes. This is probably a tomato salsa. One of my favorite salsas now is my own home canned salsa. And I got, I think, 2 cases of pints, which is 24 jars of my own homemade salsa back there now. So yeah, there's so much. This is enjoyable. For me, it's hot because Florida is still hot, and as you knew, I did all that canning yesterday, and it was 80 degrees outside. So those of you that are blessed to have a cool or cold winter, canning can heat your house as well. Don't be afraid to fire up the canner when the house is chilly, because it'll heat you up real nice, and it puts humidity into the air. There's a lot of good things about canning. I am going to try and do some more videos that might be helpful. And I hope you enjoy it. God bless and take care.